Roman concrete has been healing itself for thousands of years, surviving earthquakes, volcanoes, and the ocean. Jordan Crowder has a lot to say about how the body heals, it turns out, having survived some major, life-threatening health crises himself. We ask him lots of questions, and he offers insights that synthesize science and spirituality in a way that is just exactly our vibe. Finally, we're going to hear about something he calls probability engineering. Your future is a probability cloud. Every decision collapses some outcomes and expands others. But no, you can't manifest $1 million without becoming the kind of person who would have $1 million. Change requires energy, and the universe resists it, just like people do. We talk about how you can do it anyway. Welcome to 2026. Speaking of the new year, what better way to kick it off than with a little good karma? And by that, of course, I mean leaving a review, sending some stars. You know, the kind of thing that wakes up the algorithm and helps people find the show. You could actually do this right now. Just click or tap or swipe on over and hit the button. Podcasters always say ratings and reviews make a difference because it's true. So now I'll go ahead and optimistically assume that all this begging persuaded you to go do the thing and say, thank you. Enjoy the show. Spectrovision Radio. Welcome to Gods, Ghosts, and UFOs, the biggest podcast in the universe, where we talk about all the things they said weren't real. My name is Jordan, and I'm thrilled to welcome Mal back after a few painful weeks of absence. Hello, Mal.
It was very painful for me. Jordan, I was recovering from surgery.
Yes, I know.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking to another Jordan.
Oh.
There are two Jordans here for my listeners.
We didn't think that there weren't enough Jordans on the show, so we invited another one to join us today, increasing the Jordan quotient. Unfortunately, Tom is not with us today due to more holiday nonsense. And when I said painful, Mal, I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about us. We're the ones who really suffered.
That's sweet. That's sweet. I think it was harder for me.
Maybe. I'll trust you on that. Jordan Crowder is with us today. He is the host of the Conscious Observers podcast, which I have been mainlining ever since I discovered it several months ago. It's wonderful. Jordan, you just seem to be talking about all the things that I want to hear about right now.
Totally.
And you're reading all the books that I wish I'd already read. And you are just basically, as soon as I started listening, I was like, oh, we got to have Jordan on the show. You're also in our Spectrovision radio network. So welcome to the show. Welcome to our show, Jordan.
Hey, thanks, Jordan and Mal. It's awesome to be here. I like your guys' show a lot. Y'all have a great chemistry, and I like the format that y'all have created. So it's a pleasure to be here.
You.
Well, thank you very much. Tom is probably the best of the three of us at preparing a story to share. And since he's not here, you're going to get a weaker format today.
Well, just like my show, it's very on the fly, spontaneous,
Yeah,
so
that's
how life is.
Exactly. And what are podcasts if not mirrors of life?
Exactly.
All right. Well, today I believe Mal has a story about Roman concrete.
Yes.
Which I'm really excited to hear
It's about
because I started
concrete.
reading about it. Yeah, you didn't realize this is also a show about construction.
Well, that's awesome because I was going to talk about Greek rebarb, so we're perfect.
Wow.
Perfect. Yeah. Incredible.
What a heavy hitter we put together for our listeners this week.
Yes, indeed. This is the first episode of 2026. So we wanted to start off strong and talk about building materials. Mal, do you want to kick us off?
Yes. So I have been recovering from surgery. And so I was drawn in by a headline about self-healing Roman concrete that the Debrief put out a few weeks ago. And so this is based on a recent study called An Unfinished Pompeian Construction Site Reveals Ancient Roman Building Technology. And this was published in Nature Communications. So basically, Roman architecture, obviously, is very famous for standing the test of time. And there's an MIT associate professor. His name's Professor Admir Masick, the first person to document the process of making Roman concrete. Like the first text that was written about it was by Vitruvius, who was the first person to document the process of making Roman concrete. He wrote the text about it. And in it, he describes the process as lime being mixed with water to create a concrete predecessor, and then being mixed with other ingredients like volcanic ash from Mount Vesuvius, and then that gives you the final product. But actually, this isn't looking totally right to our associate professor, Admir Masick. He described what the actual self-healing, incredible Roman concrete, the way it's made is actually, you don't mix with the lime with the water right away. You mix lime with volcanic ash, and that creates a chemical reaction that creates heat. And then there is a sort of regenerative self-healing thing that happens because basically this material, this is a quote from Admir Masick, this material can heal itself over thousands of years. It is reactive and it is highly dynamic, and it has survived earthquakes and volcanoes. It has endured under the sea and survived degradation from the elements, because basically it's called hot mixing, and it traps and preserves the lime in a certain way. And then because the lime is highly reactive, it preserves what they call clasts, and it fills in cracks and redissolves. And so over time, it's like good leather, like wearing it in kind of makes it better, makes it softer. And that's probably not the best. I bet architects wouldn't like that I just compared those two things, but I'm just saying.
I don't know if we want our cement to become softer over time, but I catch the analogy.
I'm not sure. I love to touch walls. I want them to be soft, like soft leather. But interestingly, the article is mostly about how this associate professor is kind of dismayed by the fact that Vitruvius may have been incorrect, because he described the process one step incorrectly and never talked about the heat trapping. So basically, the whole article is kind of about the possible misreading of a concrete recipe, which I guess I was like kind of delighted by, but I'm intrigued by why I wanted this to be something more magical than this. That's more of why I wanted to bring up this story in general. Why am I so drawn in by something that has self-healing in the title, especially when it's referring to an inanimate object? I want to understand all the self-healing properties of anything. I've been thinking about this because I'm healing from surgery right now. I have one incision in particular that is giving me some trouble, and my dad keeps pulling out this bottle of silver and telling me, I'm sorry. My dad is kind of a character, but he's like, spray it on it. It's going to heal it. It's going to heal it right up. We put it on your Aunt Marianne's burn last week. And I'm like, I don't want to spray this thing on my surgery wound that my doctor didn't tell me to spray on my surgery wound. It's a surgery wound. It like goes all the way in, Dad. I don't want to do it. He's just like brought it up 4 or 5 times. Like, keep complaining. I'm just saying the silver is over
colloidal
the
silver.
Table. Yes, and there are a lot of healing properties. It's apparently very magical, but I'm nervous about it, and it's reminding me of the dad from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. He sprays Windex on everything, and I guess it's just got me thinking about how much just crazy nonsense there is about. And I'm not saying that silver is crazy nonsense. I'm just saying there's so much noise out there about healing. Whether it's like, this is how you fix your cholesterol, and this is what you do for this. And it's just like, it is too much information. And I have been lately trying to find some kind of route or some kind of thing to grab onto to try and make sense of, especially the food science stuff, which has like pretty much no regulation as far as like, don't eat avocados, those will kill you. Don't eat spinach anymore, that's bad. Don't eat this thing, or like, now this is your best friend, and here's the healing property of this super unhealthy thing. And I guess I just wanted to have a conversation with the two of you as I'm trying to heal about what you think healing is. Like, how much is mental? Should I just mostly be meditating for this healing? Or should I spray silver on my surgical wound? You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm launching this too broadly, but I'm curious, especially Jordan as our guest, if you have thoughts about healing and our participation in it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I've healed many very catastrophic things in unorthodox ways.
I want to know everything about that.
You got to look at it this way. Your body is an incredible healing machine, first of all.
Right.
I mean, humans have been around at least 1 million years. We've overcome so many adversities, made it through catastrophic cataclysms and all sorts of things, and we're still here. We're very resilient. Our body is an amazing healing machine. Most of our harm is when we get in the way of what our body does naturally. So step one, allow your body to do what it naturally has been evolved to do for eons and eons and eons. Step two is support it. Support things. Sometimes, you need to boost certain parts of it and kind of give it support in certain areas. Things like modern pharmaceuticals and things like that, even though they're culturally and socially acceptable, are incredibly new, incredibly short-term data. Even the things that we say have long-term data, when you compare it to a million years of evolution, is very short-term.
Sure.
So I usually go with more natural healing remedies. Like I had a brown recluse bite me, and my foot like almost fell off, and it was bad.
No joke.
And
Gosh.
I treated it with colloidal silver, amongst other things,
Okay.
but that was the topical thing that I put on it. This is not medical advice. I'm not in any way telling you what to do.
Don't worry. I'm not going to blame you for anything that happens to my wound. I promise.
Yeah. But there's things that humans have used around the world for centuries and centuries. Some of them going back thousands of years, where we have crazy amounts of data proving how effective these things are, that modern day doctors will call quackery, because there's no way to patent natural things, and therefore it's not a very good business model. And what they don't want is people treating themselves, because that crushes the entire medical industry. This is not a conspiracy thing. Even doctors will tell you the same thing. That's why they can't prescribe anything that's natural. That they're taught that in school, and they sign an oath to that. It's a whole thing. But that doesn't mean that when you do something natural that it's inferior. Most of the time it's superior. It's just frowned upon because you can't make money off of it. And, this is just something that I've learned myself. So there's a lot of things I do naturally, just trying to treat myself at a cellular and mitochondrial level to let my body do what it's trained, what it's made to do, which is heal itself.
What do you mean by the cellular mitochondrial level, as far as what you actually do, if you don't mind me asking?
It's actually simpler than you would think. Your body's made of cells, trillions of cells, and these cells communicate with each other, and different cells do different things. And the way that your body works is that cells have to be able to send and receive signals. Your hormones have to be able to send and receive signals. Everything has to communicate. Well, we have all these endocrine disruptors. There's all these things that happen in our world now that never happened before, like the inundation of EMF waves and blue light and all these things that you hear people talking about. Humans never had this before. This is a brand new thing. And now we're having all this disruption. So now our cells, when they try to signal, like when your pancreas tries to send insulin to a cell, for example, and your cell's like, oh, I need more insulin. Your pancreas sends insulin to it, and then your cell's closed. It doesn't absorb the insulin, and then it keeps sending a signal saying, hey, dude, I need more insulin. Your pancreas keeps pumping out more insulin. None of it gets into the cell because your cell's closed, because the signal that says the insulin is here, open up and receive, isn't working. So there's this dysfunction of at a cellular level. And when you fix that, then all the things just naturally start working the way that they're supposed to work. And your mitochondria is actually the power plants, the energy source for each cell. So each cell has its own energy source. That's how they communicate. That's how they work. That's how they replicate. That's how they heal themselves. So when you're actually trying to heal your body, what we're taught is to heal it at a surface level. But what you really need to do is heal it at a cellular level, because then your body will just heal itself. Your body will do everything that it's made to do. And we don't have to do anything. We just simply get out of its way. And every once in a while support it in certain areas. So the best things you can do are things like grounding. Just putting your bare feet on the solid earth is one of the most important things to do. Get out in the sun early in the day, get natural sunlight, fresh air, clean water, eat natural food, all these kinds of things. Try to limit blue light, like screens and stuff, after sunset. Try to get your body on circadian rhythm, see the sunrise, see the sunset. Those types of things have an amazing, benefit. I use candles at night instead of lights, things like that. So there's just certain things that you can do. Don't eat processed food, all these kinds of things. The list goes on, but there's some pretty elementary things that make a big difference, because, like I said, we don't need to heal our bodies. Our bodies heal themselves. If I cut my arm, it'll heal itself. I don't have to do anything. The worst thing I can do is treat it, put a bunch of crap on it. You keep it clean, of course, but you don't have to tell your body to heal. It'll just heal. You don't have to do anything.
This is frankly a little dismaying, Jordan, because my two favorite things are blue light and junk food. So,
I think they're everyone's favorite things.
Yeah.
You're not alone there.
So the way that you refer to treating yourself on a cellular level, it sounds a lot like when people talk about, what is the word? Calming their nervous systems, like things that are good for the nervous system.
Yeah.
They sound like similar approaches for sure.
Well, I mean, your nervous system is all signaling too. So you have a sympathetic and a parasympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic is fight or flight. That's when you are anxious, nervous, that kind of stuff. Parasympathetic is when you're in rest and digest. It's when you're like chill and zenned out. That means that your body doesn't sense any fear or danger and it can actually heal and relax itself. So it's supposed to be like a windshield wiper. You know what I mean? Like you're supposed to be able to go into fight or flight and then go into rest and digest, then go to neutral. You're supposed to activate your parasympathetic and then deactivate it, activate your sympathetic, deactivate it. So you're supposed to have this flexibility. That's what they talk about nervous system regulation and dysregulation is just when it's not like a windshield wiper, it just gets stuck. So some people get stuck in like parasympathetic, and these are the people that have no motivation. They're just like, screw it, I don't care. They just sit around all day. That's when you lose ambition, you lose motivation, you're stuck in parasympathetic. When you get stuck in sympathetic, those are the people that are super nervous, super anxious, always fight or flight, like freaking out. So that's very bad, obviously. What you want is to be in the middle most of the time, unless you need to dip into the extremes, and then you dip into it, and then you come back. So it's all signaling, and that has to do with hormones and stuff. So your body's like, hey, dude, there's danger, heighten your senses, and that's when you go into sympathetic. And then you're like, okay, cool, danger's gone, go back to para. But what happens is we like, oh, there's danger, we get into sympathetic, and we get stuck there because the signal to tell us there's no danger doesn't get sent. So it all has to do with cellular signaling.
Can I ask you another question? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Jordan, did I just cut you off?
No, I was just going to say that's awesome. I was just going to say that's...
So I'm curious about how you navigate the onslaught of information, because I'm often kind of paralyzed by it. I just had abdominal surgery, right? I had something removed. I had a very large tumor in my abdomen. It wasn't killing me, but it was causing a lot of problems. It was hard to make the decision to remove it. But I also have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and I've had some other issues too. But like, there are all these different recommendations for people with my conditions, but they all cancel each other out. So it's like, you should not have dairy. And then it's like, okay, but also don't have soy. And also, there's too much fat in these nut milks or like this. Or those are too processed. So like, don't eat anything processed, but also don't like. Eventually, I get to a list of like all these foods that are like paradoxically apparently affecting my body. And so, as you can imagine, I think it puts me in more of the anxious fight or flight kind of a state of mind in general. And this is just me using a personal example, but I feel that most people, especially as we all age, are going to be facing various ailments and aches and pains, and just this continued onslaught of information. And I'm just curious about how you approach it and how you test it out, or whether or not you use other things in your life or your spiritual tool belt to try and make sense of all of it.
Amazing question, and yes, you're right. Everybody in the world is in the same boat because it's paralysis by analysis. You have some sort of an ailment, something happens, and then you start researching it, and you're like, what the hell? Like, I'm not supposed to do this, and I'm not supposed to, like, what's left to eat? What's left to drink? What's left to do? Yeah. And then they tell you to take this supplement, and then you take it, and then this person says, don't take that, and then you start taking something, and 6 months later, they're like, everyone stop. It can be ridiculous. As just a personal story, so I have naturally super high blood sugar. I have insulin resistance. I had pancreatitis really bad, and and it was caused by alcoholism, and I almost died from it. And so I've been sober now 6 years, but I did a lot of damage to my body that I had to heal. And I started like band-aiding everything because I was like, okay, well, if my blood sugar is really high, and naturally it just always is, and I was like, so I have to eat less sugar. So I went totally carnivore. And I was like, okay, I guess I can just never have honey or fruit again. Like, this sucks. I like those things. And I was like, so this is just my life. And I kind of succumbed to that. So I was just carnivore, just keto. And I was like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, what's going on at a structural level? So that's when I started diving into cellular health and mitochondrial health and these kinds of things, and trying to fix it at like a source level. And granted, there are just some things, there's elements, just like any working machine or a complex machine, there's going to be things that go wrong and whatnots. Everyone has their restrictions and limitations. So it doesn't mean there's just like a perfect like level for every human to obtain. So everyone's going to have their own parameters and things they have to work around for sure. But what I do, me personally, is I try something, and after a lot of research, because I research the crap out of everything. I just see if I feel better or not. But also, I like to go and zoom out and think about like humans are a machine. We're a biological machine that's been around for millions of years. And we've evolved a certain way. We've eaten a certain way. We've done certain things for a very long time. And we're nothing but just patterns. And my whole law of probability, this whole framework that I've created, it goes into how we live in a probabilistic universe, and now we live in a physical kind of bubble inside this probabilistic universe, and how we went from probability to physical. Anyways, whole point of all that is the probabilities turn into solid matter through a series of patterns and repeatable things. And so we're nothing but patterns. And so you have to look at not just how we act now, what we eat now, what we drink now, what we take now. You have to look at what our ancestors did, what we did 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, because those patterns, those habits, those behaviors are baked into us at a like cellular level. And so things that our ancestors ate and drank and things that they did are sort of hardwired into us. And you have to kind of take that into account. You have to accommodate that. You have to understand that this machine that we're in, we're a higher self and a human self that fuse into one being, but we are a physical being. And this physical being came from the earth. This physical being has been programmed a certain way through eons and eons of repeated behavior and habits and things like that. And we have to take that into account. We can't just throw that out and just be like, no, it's 2025. We're starting fresh. It's like, no, so like people look at me and they say, how can you eat animals if you're like a high consciousness being and all this kind of stuff? And it's like, well, I didn't make the physical body. Like I know that when I was a vegan, I was a raw vegan for years, and it allowed me to heal certain things. I healed my pancreatitis that way. But then I got really, really sick because I became very deficient in all sorts of things. I had chronic headaches. I was weak. So then I started eating meat and I started feeling better. I was like, okay, well, I don't want to eat meat because I was having this conflict of consciousness. But I was like, I also didn't design my physical body. And so I was just kind of trial and erroring things. And then the more I looked into ancestral eating and ancestral habits and even my own lineage, my own ancestry, I was like, okay, when I started eating the way that my ancestors ate, I felt better. So I was like, okay, so there's certain things that are out of my control. There's certain things that are just kind of hardwired in. So I just accepted that. I zoomed out and started looking at things bigger than just what we're taught in school and what the medical system has trained the doctors to believe and think. When you zoom out and you look at things bigger, and this is not a knock. I have a lot of friends that are doctors and surgeons, and I love them all. and modern medicine is an amazing miracle. But there are some things in there that I know we're going to look back on 20 years from now, 30 years from now, and they're going to be like, oof, guys, y'all shouldn't have been doing that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Speaking of patterns,
Yeah.
it's happened so many times before. Of course, it'll happen
Mistakes.
again.
Absolutely.
Mistakes guaranteed.
And it's all part of the
Yeah.
learning. Yeah, it's part of growth. Yeah, nothing wrong. So that was my take. Is I like, for example, I walk on the ground. I go to the beach every morning and every night and put my feet in the sand. I try to have my eyes see sunlight in the morning and night. That's very natural. That's very normal. I sit in a sauna. It allows me to sweat. I do that every day. It sweats out impurities. It expands your blood vessels and things like that. Lets things flow better. I do these kinds of things that are more natural. I work out a lot, run a lot. And those are things that like our ancestors did. You know what I mean? They didn't have AC. They sweated a lot. They were cold a lot. They had to do a lot of manual labor, these kinds of things. So, we want to fast forward to like this utopian future where we don't eat meat and we don't have to exercise and we don't have to do these things. You just take a pill for everything. And that's coming someday, I'm sure, with CRISPR. But for now, we kind of have to like honor the way our body has evolved and was made. And that's why things like walking and exercise and stuff like that is so beneficial, because that's what our ancestors did. They had to. It was not a negotiable thing. It wasn't like they're like, I'm going to go to the gym. They're like, no, I'm freaking running from a saber-tooth tiger, or I have to go get water from a well that's 10 miles away, or whatever. So we have to honor that ancient lineage of our physical body. And when you do, you feel better. You feel more natural, more connected to earth, more connected to spirit, more connected to yourself. And then your body just functions at a higher level. So long answer to a short question.
Oh
Man, it's such a great answer.
Great answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
We had Robin Lassiter on again, and we love her. And I remember sometime in the past couple of years, I was listening to, it was either in her book or one of her episodes of her podcast, where she talked about how we have these ideals, this idea of what we want to be, of what we hope to become. And it's frankly usually pretty sanitized. It's this sort of like smooth, silvery thing. Like we just think we could just become this perfect thing that we design. And she says, but the reality is really messy. Like we're just in the earth. We're in this the dirt, and that's okay. It's like that's where we're from, and like we have to be okay with our messiness and with our chaos. And I'm reminded too of just the way that like a lot of chronic child illness comes from over sanitization. When you protect your kids from the dirt, basically, they don't build up all the immune system things that they need, and they get sick way more often. And I've seen this happen. I mean, you can just see this across a sample size of your friends, which friends are letting their kids play outside and which kids aren't, and like which kids get sick more often. It's pretty simple, but like for a long time, we just didn't realize that. We have to honor and recognize the reality of what we are. This is an identity question. And, it came up a lot in the last episode too with Tom and Robin. We were just talking about how we're animals. Yes, we're higher selves. We have souls. We are these sort of divine beings, but like we're also these human body that just, they have, like you're saying, patterns. They have ways of being, ways of operating, and they're also really robust. They have an incredible ability to adapt. I'm thinking about the fact that we live in an environment that's filled with, as you're talking about, toxins and filled with carcinogens and filled with just all kinds of awful things. But our bodies are really, really good at processing those things and getting rid of what they don't need and getting more of what they want if we'll just listen. And if we just, kind of keep showing up and allow our bodies to have access to the things that they need so that they can then deal with all the countless things that we can't even see. We don't even recognize. Like, I have no idea how many cancer cells my body is getting rid of every day.
Yeah. Everything you said is 100% accurate.
Well, I so appreciate it, Jordan. And you mentioned too that, well, you referred to yourself as was it high consciousness being? I think I've heard you say it on your podcast as well. And is that how you phrased it?
Yeah, I cringed when I said it, so I shouldn't even have said that. But yeah,
no,
I mean,
that's what I loved it.
I don't know myself.
We'll refer to you as a high consciousness.
I don't think of myself that way. It's like that should be everyone's ambition. It's just I think we're here. I call this a simulator for consciousness development. So we're here to level up and evolve our consciousness for sure. That's the point of all this.
Well, would you feel comfortable talking a little bit about your consciousness journey, since that's so much of what your podcast delves into, from wherever you'd like? But the beginning's always a nice place to start. Jordan, do you have thoughts?
Well, before you do, I want to make sure that if you did come prepared with a story about Greek rebar.
Oh, yes. We gotta hear it.
I don't know if that was a joke or if that was sincere, but if it was sincere, I really want to hear it. And if it was a joke, we can move on.
No, it was a joke. I don't always have the best joke delivery, so I'm kind of dry.
So. You got my hopes up a little bit. It's okay.
But I will research that, because I'm sure out there is a story that needs to be told about that topic.
About Greek rebar.
Absolutely.
Good. I was going to be astonished that there was such an incredible alignment of our of our preparation, but let's leave that for another day then.
I guess 6 years ago, I had a near-death experience, and I, after decades of alcohol abuse, I just completely punished my body and broke it down to rock bottom, and I was rushed to the hospital. And through that whole process, I was in a out-of-body state. My consciousness had been essentially sanitized from my body. It wasn't a hospitable place anymore. So through that process, and it was dire, and I almost died, and I realized a few things that okay, more than my physical body, because my consciousness was watching it from almost like a security camera point of view, like a third person point of view. And it was even kind of grainy and black and white, which I did a whole deep dive on later because I was trying to figure out why that was, and it's super interesting. So I was in this out-of-body state through that process, and then we had this I don't even know how to say it without sounding crazy, but in the room, once I was admitted and stabilized, we had an encounter with a blue orb that came into the hospital room. And then after that, things changed dramatically in my life. I felt purpose-driven. I felt like I was on a mission. When I got out, I was weak. I couldn't walk. I was in bad shape, and I had to heal from the ground up everything. So through this whole process, I went through my dark night of the soul. I started researching. Okay, I never thought about mortality before. Never thought about any of this stuff. So I'm okay, what would have happened if I died? What happens after death? And all this stuff. And that led me down dark night of the soul. And then I had this awakening, this kind of Kundalini type, just blow the top off awakening. And it changed everything. And I started looking at everything different. And it happened basically overnight. And that led me to the Monroe Institute, because I started studying consciousness. And then I went up to the Monroe Institute and trained there, which was a crazy experience because I was not even invited there. They paid for it. They rolled out the red carpet. They shuttled me there, and it was like this fantasy that I had to go. So it was like this total realization that I could manifest these things that were kind of improbable. So I learned all these amazing things there, and really learned how to not only remove my consciousness from my body, but to how to shift my awareness, how to it's hard to explain, but like your awareness is in your body, obviously, but you can take your awareness out. And I do this visualization thing where you literally just close your eyes, you turn off all your senses, but you visualize this bright pulsating light, this white light ball. That's your awareness. And you can move that awareness anywhere. That's how we remote view. That's how we astral project. That's how we do all sorts of things. I even used it to go into my body and to heal my organs and stuff, remote viewing internally. And all these crazy techniques that I learned there. And anyways, what this did is it showed me all these things because I learned how to remote view from Joe McMonagle, who's probably the best remote viewer in the world. He was the original person in Project Stargate, and I remote viewed a lot. I realized that consciousness was a lot non-local, that we were tapped into this information field. I've had out-of-body experiences. I've astral projected some crazy places. I've had multiple interactions with what we'd call non-human intelligences in different dimensions in like a controlled situation at the Monroe Institute, all documented. I've done these things repeatedly. And I had miraculous healing to the point where my doctor cried and hugged me when she did like my test results because she was the one who told me I was basically going to die. So all these things have happened. So what it proved to me was like, okay, I'm not just this meat bag with this like projection of a consciousness, how neuroscientists want you to think that like your consciousness is nothing more than your mind thinking and basically, I don't know, almost like personifying a soul so that it like, I don't know, makes you feel good and whatever. But the consciousness is actually independent and separate from the physical body. And I look at it more like the consciousness is streamed more or less like a radio signal into a radio, and the body's just like an antenna that receives it. And through this heart-brain coherence that I've dissected, it creates this being, this electromagnetic resonance that unites the higher self and the human self and creates this human being. And it gives us our sense of identity and physical being. But this physical avatar will die and we'll have another one. I've done past life regressions. I'm very knowledgeable in that world. And, my wife is a hypnotist and she can take you to past lives and show you that your consciousness, your essence, your personality has been multiple lives before. This isn't even something that should be questioned anymore. People like Dr. Michael Newton, Dr. Ian Stevenson with the University of Virginia have done over 10,000 case studies on past life regression, proof of reincarnation through things called death marks, all sorts of things. Anyways, we know that the consciousness is eternal, that it survives death, that you've had many, many incarnations. And that was my biggest thing is through this whole process of learning what I am, and all this stuff. And that was a game changer for me because it adds so much more purpose to your life. This is not a one and done thing. This is just one chapter in a very long book. And when you look at things that way, I don't know, to me, it makes it more fun, less severe. You know what I mean? Like you don't have this like impending doom, like, oh no, I'm going to die and it's all over. And what was this all for? You can look at it as it's like a VR headset for your soul. You're coming in, you're playing this game, you're having fun, you're learning your lessons, you're doing all this stuff. And, one day you're going to take the VR headset off and you're going to go back to where you came from, real base level reality. And then you'll probably put on another VR headset and play a different character and learn some new lessons. That's why I call it a simulator. I created something called simulator theory. That's a different take on simulation theory, but I say it's almost like our soul uses this physical reality the same way a pilot uses a flight simulator to become a better pilot through the adversities and challenges and restraints that we have in the physical world. So that was my biggest thing. So I created the Conscious Observers podcast to just explore consciousness. Like every episode is just deep diving into a different element and aspect of consciousness from every single angle, So that's kind of my journey to this point. Talking to you guys.
That's a pretty good summary.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's such an epic journey. So one of the things that you mentioned was Dark Night of the Soul. And when you refer to a dark night of the soul, what are you referring to? Because Jordan and I are writers, so like our background isn't like that's like the moment in the story where like the character doesn't think they can go on anymore. Are you referring to that, or is there a specific way you're referring to it?
On the like spiritual awakening journey, usually what Dark Night of the Soul refers to is this point where you start questioning everything because you realize you wake up, and lack of better words, you wake up and you realize, okay, things I've been told, things I've been taught, things I thought I could believe and trust aren't what they seem. and you have this whole like shaking up a snow globe episode where you're just like, what can I trust? What is real? Like, what is going on? And it leads, like every answer leads to like 50 questions, and you just are overwhelmed with questions, lack of answers, can't trust anything, belief systems torn down, confusion. That usually leads to this like darkness. Like, what do I even do? Where do I go from here? Complete overwhelm. And then in like the mystery schools, they would do that on purpose, and then they would take you through an initiatory process where it's kind of like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You see the light, you go towards the light, and you emerge, with this awakening, this understanding of things. But you have to go to that rock bottom, that dark night of the soul place first. It's the trauma and that the self inquiry, the self reflection, that process is what leads to this awakening. You have to tear down all the boundaries, all of the barriers, all the belief systems, all the structure, and you have to emerge with this fresh, open mind, like this kind of newfound, like almost curiosity and enthusiasm for like, okay, like you're emerging from this darkness. And that's like the initiation, and that usually leads to the awakening. So that dark night of the soul is just what it sounds like. It's like this, your soul's just like,
Yeah.
what is this? Where do I go? Who can I trust? Like, and it leads you all down these dark rabbit holes and archonic control systems and evil this and evil that and all this kind of stuff. But you kind of have to go through that mud to emerge on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love you referring to it as an initiation. One of my favorite writers writes about the Dark Night of the Soul as essentially like when a character is just about to transform into like from one idea that is a lie to a truth. And they think they know the truth, but they don't know how to live it yet. And so they usually like trip right before they get there. And like their world has been blown open. The lie doesn't feel real anymore, but the truth also feels like they can't quite grasp it. And so the idea that it's an initiation, I think, is correct. And I don't know that it's avoidable. I mean, because you were saying it happened after your near-death experience, even though you were feeling all this purpose, you were sort of blown open, I'm assuming, and that can lead to a lot of disillusionment and what's the word I'm looking destabilization is what I'm looking
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the
makes
common
sense.
trajectory is something destabilizing happens in your life that forces you to question everything. And
Yeah.
once you do that, the more you question, the more you realize most of the things cannot withstand questioning. Like most of your belief structures and belief systems and most of the things that you think you can trust and believe and you have faith in and that you look up to usually cannot handle too much scrutiny. And the more you actually analyze things and dive into things, you realize that everything is paper thin and that most things aren't necessarily like lies, but they're not truths. It's like a facade. And then it's fine because most people operate in that matrix mode, and it's actually like how our world operates so cleanly. We need 90% of people to be in matrix mode. But at a certain point through your spiritual and consciousness journey, you will sort of rise above that. And you'll kind of be the player in the game that wakes up and realizes they're in a game. And everyone else in the game still knows they're in a game, and that's fine. But there's like always that one that's like, looking around like, I think this is a freaking game. You know what I mean? Like, so, and then that other 10% is like, hey, you come over here. Hey, if you think that's cool, we got some stuff for you. And so there's like on Earth, there is this small percentage of people that just sort of understand how reality is actually structured and how it works. And they stay to themselves, more or less. And the rest of the world just goes on the way they go on. But so, yeah, that dark night of the soul almost always comes after the initial awakening process. It's not like you just wake up one day and you're like, I understand it all. All you do is you wake up one day and understand that you don't know anything. And that's when the journey really starts.
Yeah.
I really appreciate this
Yeah.
language because I'm realizing more and more that I wouldn't say I've spoken down on myself or I've been down on myself about this, but we've been doing this podcast we sort of started working on it a year ago, and then we launched it in April, and so we've done a lot of episodes. We've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people who haven't been on the show. I've done a lot of reading. I listened to a lot, and I haven't had a lot of the kinds of tangible life-changing experiences that a lot of people talk about. And so on some level, it's like, there's a little bit of like feel left out. Like, like, where's my like near death experience? Why haven't I almost
yeah.
died? Like, why haven't I been abducted by aliens? Like,
Oh, you're young. It'll happen.
yeah, so, exactly. But like, but if like as you're talking, I'm like realizing like the reason that I was so motivated to help start this show was because I did go through like a sort of dark night of the soul for like several years of having so much of what I had tried to understand and unpack be sort of like just disassembled for me. And it wasn't any particular event. It was just the fact that like the brain that I've been given, the mind that I have for whatever reason, I just worry and work on stuff constantly. And so there's no sort of idea or question or assertion that's safe from like the sort of gnawing persistence of my brain that just like will not let stuff go. And little by little, like I realized I had just sort of shredded everything. And that all that was left was just this sort of like darkness, basically. And I had never really thought of that period of my life as a dark night of the soul. But I realized that that's really when things started to turn around, was when I realized that I was in such a place of nothingness, such a place of like not knowing anything, that it became a crisis. And I had to like find something to hold on to again. And the things that I found to hold on to are ultimately what led me here. And so it's sort of beautiful to realize it happens differently for everyone. Like everyone encounters things differently and goes through experiences differently. And you really can't control it though either. Like you want to say like, oh, now I'm ready for my enlightenment. Like you don't get to really pick. You have to just sort of like accept whatever comes and then try to like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I try to use this language and then words fail me suddenly as usual. But I do appreciate that context because I think one of the most mystical experiences I had, it sounds so mundane when I talk about it, but like it was a book encounter. There was a point at which I was the closest to being, I would say, converted to what I've often termed as the dead cosmology or the dead universe cosmology, which is the sort of, strict materialism billiard ball universe, like the everything is just rocks and they, that's it. And that, consciousness is basically just a figment of meat brains, like firing off in weird ways. It was the closest I'd ever been to being a convert to that and hating it so much. Like I hated it so much and I didn't, the last thing I wanted, but it felt like this black hole was like sort of sucking me in. And then I had a book encounter. I had like a mystical experience with finding the exact right book for me at that time and reading it and being totally, totally transformed by it. And it wasn't even that my behavior changed all that much, but like my heart was completely turned around with that book encounter.
What book was it? If you don't mind me asking.
Oh no, I don't mind at all. It's funny because like, for a while I was like, everyone's got to read this book, and then I realized like, no, it's personal, just like every experience, every sort of phenomenological experience. Like it's all, some people might have a great experience with it, and some people will be like, okay, whatever. But it's a book called The Great Partnership, and it's written by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, and it's this really gorgeous sort of breakdown of the prevailing tension between science and religion, and how that tension is basically born of a misunderstanding of both things. And it wasn't even necessarily that he said anything that I had never heard before or that I hadn't thought of. It was the way that he used language to try to get at these ideas, and how brilliant, like how clearly and obviously brilliant and humble this guy was. And, and I felt like overexposed to the really, truly brilliant people who were advocates for materialism, and feeling like, well, all the smartest people in the room don't believe in enchantment. So like, what am I doing, chasing anything other than, whatever this materialist paradigm we have is. But then that book really helped to break me back open. And the way that I came across the book was it had been sitting in a place, like waiting for the right time. And then just out of nowhere, I hadn't thought about the book in years, and it was just like on the shelf somewhere. And in that like lowest moment, I had just this sort of like, it seemed to come from outside, right? Like, you should try looking at that book you've never read, that you've sort of thought about reading and then thought about getting rid of for the past like 5 years. And so I was like, oh, I'll take a look, and I'll read a couple pages and we'll see if it does it. And I couldn't put it down. And it was exactly what I needed. Anyway, did not intend to go there. Thanks, guys.
Gorgeous.
Hey,
No,
books are
gorgeous.
magical, man.
Yeah, they really are. They really are.
They really are. One of my favorite books on writing that I've ever read is a book called On Writing by Stephen King. It's
That's a
so
great
good.
book. That's a great
It's
book.
so good. And he in it he talks about writing as time travel, and that makes it even more mystical and enchanted to me too. That Rabbi Jonathan Sachs could time travel to you from wherever he was to that moment. And
Yeah.
I think there's so much magic in a book encounter. I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah, it was really wonderful.
I think it was Einstein who had the quote, which I love, which is synchronicity is the universe's way of maintaining anonymity. And
Yes.
basically,
Ah,
it mean like if that book would have just like materialized in your hands, then you would have been like, the jig is up. I understand. We live in a
yes.
Yeah.
holographic reality.
Yeah.
But instead, it comes in this like synchronistic way where the universe can maintain plausible deniability and be like, I don't know how you got the book, but they always
Who
come at the right
knows?
time. Yeah, and it's obviously orchestrated in a way.
Yeah.
I really think by your higher self, which is always playing a role in these things and a guiding role. It doesn't want to impede on your free will, but it definitely at the right times things like that tend to happen to steer you in a better direction. And it's very obvious at a certain point that a lot of this is orchestrated, but not
Yeah.
from some sort of AI control system, but from us, just a different version of us that's sort of overseeing. It's like we're the character in the game and the one playing the game at the same time. You know.
Yeah.
Oh man, Jordan, that's cool. I like that a lot. I'm gonna be thinking about that one.
Mal and I, a few weeks ago, she coined the term the ampersand universe. I don't know if you did, actually. I keep crediting you as having coined
I
it,
don't.
but
I think I might have made it up. I hope I did.
I hope you did. But I love this because I keep coming back to it. It's just another wonderful way of saying the same thing that we've been saying, which is that the both are true thing, which is that if you try to take two things that seem contradictory, it turns out that they're both true. And I do think that the universe is deeply, sort of mysteriously personal. Our lives, our experiences, everything that we see are so deeply personal. One of the most profound spiritual experiences of my life was in witnessing a deep space image of a galaxy. It just went right down to the center of where I was and just like locked me in. And I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. And it was beyond any type of words I could possibly have managed to utter. And there was something deeply personal about this thing that was so clearly objectively not personal, you know? And I think that the idea that the universe is deeply personal, but that also there's this infinite array of different minds that are sometimes universes apart, and that the way that we relate to each other can be baffling and mystifying is just anyway. So both those things seem to be true as well.
Jordan, I have a question for you based on other Jordan. Dang it. I don't know how to do this.
I don't now. I don't know who you're talking to. I'm happy to be other Jordan for the duration of the conversation.
I think we've just merged
is.
into one.
Yes.
We're like Super Jordan now. Yeah.
Ampersand Jordans. Jordan and Jordan. No, Jordan Crowder. I'm wondering, what would you tell someone then who was lost or hoping for an awakening in their lives, given that you felt quite lost at one point in your life, and Jordan was describing a time when he felt that way as well? Would you say you're right on track, it's coming for you, or would you tell them to do something? You know what I mean? Like, how do you approach somebody who's like, I want it to happen to me, but nothing good ever happens to me? You know, so many people feel that way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, and that's where I was before too. You had mentioned that you watched my episode of Christ Consciousness, and at the end of it, I am so bold as to create a hypothetical situation where I'm sitting on the porch with 90-year-old Jesus having a cup of coffee, because in this alternative reality, the crucifixion and resurrection was symbolic, like a near-death experience, and he continued on. And I could ask him at this point in old Jesus's period where, hey, what did you learn? And if you could tell me, if you could distill your awakening process down into some easy, a 10-step process, what would you tell me? And I don't honestly remember exactly what I said, because all of this stuff just flows out of me. I don't script anything or write anything down. I've never even watched one of my episodes. I actually don't like the sound of my voice, so I just record it and hit post and I move on. But I'm so
You and I are
flattered for other
nothing
people.
alike, Jordan. You and I are
Yeah.
nothing alike. I listen to every single episode.
I wish I could, because then I could critique myself and learn, but I can't. It's funny, my wife will like turn them on and I'm just like, nope, leave the room. So, but anyways, the gist of it is that the awakening process is messy. It's very messy because it's like a detox, but it's like a spiritual detox. And the more, okay, we'll say leading up to the awakening, the more like stuck in belief systems, the more walls you've built up, the more entrenched you've gotten things, the messier it's going to be. So one tip I would say is try to be, it doesn't mean you can't be religious or spiritual or have belief systems. I tell people to have strong belief systems and hold them lightly. You know what I mean? Like don't become like a martyr for something. Always give yourself a little wiggle room to evolve and to change with new information. The more just grounded and open and sort of agnostic you are to everything, the better for the awakening process, because it just won't be as messy. It's still going to be messy, but don't make it harder on yourself than it has to be. Be humble. But also, there's not like a right, like it doesn't mean like, okay, this guy had it at this age and I'm this age and I haven't had it yet. Not even every incarnation are you going to have an awakening process or an awakening moment. It's not necessary for everyone in every point in their journey. It's like almost like a graduation. It's like when you go to school, there's all sorts of grades that you go through before you graduate. So it doesn't mean just because you're in school, you're going to graduate. Like you're going to be in some unceremonious grades, like fourth grade, nothing happens. Like you get to the end of fourth grade and they're like, what do you win? Oh, you get to go to fifth grade now. It's like, oh, that's it. So not everything, not every like chapter is going to have this big blowout award ceremony. So look at that this awakening process is orchestrated at a higher level, because I believe it is. And it's done at the right time when you're going to get the most out of it. If it's done at the wrong time, it might have a catastrophic effect. There's a guy who wrote a book, I forget the name of it now, but it's talking about the fine line between psychosis and enlightenment, and how, depending on the culture you're in, like if you're in certain cultures and you have an enlightenment, you become a shaman or a healer or a medicine man or some sort of a person who is like actually appreciated. But like in other cultures, you have the same kind of awakening process and you're put in a mental institution. You know what I mean? Like you're seen as a crazy person. So it can go either way. Like there's a fine line between enlightenment and psychosis. So it's like you have to understand that if it is sort of engineered at a higher level, you have to just trust the timing. Don't try to force it. Don't romanticize it. Say, I want to have this happen to me. Like, for example, mine happened when I was 40. What would have happened if it happened when I was 30? I don't know. Maybe it would have had an unintended consequence. Maybe it would have taken me a different direction. So I just have to trust that it happened the way it happened at the time it happened, because that's when it was supposed to happen. So you don't really need to do anything like to facilitate it, for sure. Don't go out and try to have a near-death experience or anything.
Sure.
I think like alien encounters, spiritual encounters, the name of y'all show, God's Ghost and UFOs, all those things I think are actually elements that can be put into play to facilitate these processes, but it's done at an individual level. Like John Archibald Wheeler, my favorite physicist, he talks about this as a participatory universe, and that we sort of render our own bubble universe within this larger collective universe. And a lot of that is done at a very subjective level. So your consciousness will see and have the type of awakening experience that's going to have the most profound impact on you. So yours might be completely different than mine. Mine will be completely different than that guy's. It's all at a subjective level. But I feel like it's done when it's supposed to happen. So don't try to force it. Just try not to make it harder than it has to be by being too entrenched in really rigid belief systems. That's just my take.
I think the unceremonious grade analogy is really good. I think it's really helpful. And the truth is, you brought up fourth grade, and it wasn't, I didn't get to graduate from elementary school, but that was my favorite teacher of all time. You know what I mean? It's like, your life's going to be great, regardless of whether or not you're in a very ceremonious grade or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you'll have lifetimes where it's an amazing lifetime, but nothing really significant happens. Like I said, my wife does past life regression. She takes people back to past lives. And sometimes these past lives are wild. Sometimes they're not even on Earth. They're not even in a human body. That actually happens more often than you think. But other lifetimes are very boring. Like people want to think that they were like, I don't know. Everyone wants to be Cleopatra or Napoleon for some weird reason. But like oftentimes you're just a farmer or a teacher or some regular person doing regular things. And you realize, oh, well, that life didn't really have any like significant meaning. And it's like, well, I mean, you don't know that. Like you might have overcome so many personal things, so many, like, I don't know, different types of blocks, different types of like individual, adversity and challenges and that kind of stuff. It's all growth and it all has significance. It's just sometimes it's not sexy or flashy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
There's no such thing as a human life that doesn't have meaning.
Exactly. But it's subjective meaning a lot of times. So to an outside observer, it doesn't seem significant.
Yeah.
But to
Right.
that
Yeah.
person
It might
at
not
that
be
time,
your meaning. It might not be
yeah,
it's like just because you personally don't, you can't recognize the meaning in someone else's life or in one of your past lives, maybe. It's like because your meaning, each of us, our own lives are where the most meaning is. It's like that's where the meaning matters. Oh, man, I hate that sentence.
The
I wish I could
meaning
take it
means.
right back out of the universe. That's what the meaning means. Um,
I know what you mean.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Well, like real quick example, when I got into manifestation, which at the Monroe Institute they call patterning, I became really good and proficient at it. And I had somebody ask me one time, I did a podcast, and I'm like, well, if you're so good at manifesting, like, why aren't you a millionaire? And I was like, do you know what I manifested when I figured out how I could pattern? I used to have crippling anxiety. I was diagnosed with general anxiety disorder. Sometimes I couldn't even drive my car. All I wanted to do was travel. I just wanted to fly on an airplane. And to me, that seemed like almost an impossibility. And I was manifesting flying on an airplane, at 40 years old, right? And I used to fly back in the day because I had a corporate job and I flew a lot for that. And I hated it. And I was miserable. And I had to drink to fly. So anyways, that to me was like this personal battle and this like huge win for me. Like, oh my God. And then I started flying everywhere and I started traveling. I was like, I can travel, and it was like amazing. But to the average person, they're like, really, dude? Like, that's not a big deal. And it's like, well, for me, it was, man. Like, for me, that was the biggest deal, because I
Yeah.
felt completely like handicapped by that fear. Like, everyone's wins are different. And to an outside observer, it might not seem very significant. But that person, like if you can't walk and you take your first step, that's the biggest thing ever. So,
Yeah. What good is $1 million going to do if you're still struggling with crippling anxiety and can't do the things that you want to do? It's like,
exactly.
yeah. First things first,
Yeah.
guy.
Money is not
Yeah.
freedom. Then, know.
Jordan, do you want to quickly give us a tiny little bit of an introduction and maybe plug for your probability engineering, which is, I know, something that you're working on right now?
Thank you. I feel weird doing it, but yeah, I'm excited about it. So I want people to know about it because the results have been amazing for so many people now. It's called the law of probability. And basically what I was doing is, like, I hate even using the word manifestation because it's so loaded. There's so many
Sure.
people out there talking about it and all this stuff. Basically, the law of probability is like the quantum mechanics of manifestation. What I wanted to do is dive into how this works. Like, people say things like your thoughts create reality, and I've been able to prove it to an extent. Like, I have some verifiable things that I've done in my life that are very unprobable. And I was like, okay, so I know that our thoughts create reality and that we're rendering this reality and that everything's quantum at a certain level. So this physical matter reality shouldn't even really exist. And even when you take something physical like this can and you peer deep into it enough at a very granular atomic level, you find that everything's just vortices of energy and there is no actual physicality to anything. So I was like, okay, knowing that, how do I explain this world? How do I explain how our thought interacts with this world? And how do I explain how our thoughts can actually kind of edit and manipulate this world, right? So I dove into that hardcore, into the science and the quantum mechanics of reality. And what I discovered is that our future, like say you want to manifest something in your future, you're not manifesting something. What you're doing is you are, I live in Florida, but like when a hurricane's come in, they have those spaghetti models and it's like, here's the hurricane and here's the possible paths, right? And it'll have those little, they call them spaghetti models. It's like those little wavy lines. And they'll say, okay, here's the 5 possible paths and here's the probabilities of each. 20% chance it goes here, 50% chance it goes here. Our future is very much like that. Our future is nothing but possibilities. And those possibilities are projections from our past. So we have these very defined rule sets, these very defined parameters of what can happen. So basically what you're going to do next is probabilistic. It's not deterministic. It's probabilistic. It can be deterministic in the sense that if your probability of a certain path being chosen is so high, because say you've done the same thing 20 days in a row, there's almost a guarantee you're going to do it on day 21, then it becomes deterministic. But you can take the power back by what I call probability engineering, which is saying, okay, if my future is these certain paths and it's based on my past and my current free will decisions, and I want to select a particular path, then what I'm doing at a manifestation level is actually engineering the probability of the path that I want to actually happen, the outcome I actually want. You engineer the probability to such a high degree that it's inevitable, that it's going to be selected when it's called the wave function collapse. When the wave function collapses and that probability distribution field collapses and they choose one probability. The one that I want, the outcome I want, is the one that's selected. Okay, now when it happens, say it's something that's far out, maybe a year from now, and I'm trying to manifest this outcome, and I want that outcome to happen. And you do something called probability engineering. You engineer the probability to such a high degree that it becomes inevitable. What happens is all the cascading things between here and there, every single little free will decision you make, every little pathway, every little fork in the road, this is nothing but a choose your own adventure game after all those little forks in the roads that lead from here to here, now the right path to get you up the little Plinko board all the way to your outcome will fall into place. And basically what it does is it increases the probability of each one of those intervening paths to a point where it's the one that's selected. There's something called the wave function collapse. And basically what it says is that every moment of every point in existence, there is like this packet of possibilities, right? And upon observing or measurement from a conscious observer, the whole name of my show, when you consciously observe something, that wave function collapses. And what that means is that, say there's 5 possibilities in that wave function. It's like a little encapsulated probability segment. Say there's 5 possibilities in there. It coheres one of them and decoheres the other 4, which means the other 4 are now decoherent. They essentially only exist in the information state. They kind of fade away. That one that coheres now becomes the path. So in between here, where I'm at now, and my final outcome, there's tons of these little packets of probabilities. So what you do when you manifest is you're essentially just creating this like nice line between here and there. And you do that by increasing the probability of your outcome to such a high degree, everything between here and there falls into place. And I created this like whole framework to do that, to engineer these things through all these different modalities of what I call, they're manifestation techniques, but you're essentially just probability engineering certain things. So anyways, I know it's a little geeky and I don't know if it makes sense, but when you do the thing, it makes sense because you realize you're not manifesting anything. You're not creating something out of nothing. What you're doing is selecting something out of a future probability distribution field. But it's like a choose your own adventure game, but you get to choose your path instead of subconsciously using your default programming and just head down, going through life and letting the chips fall where they may. You actually take control of the wheel and decide where you're going. And you can, with enough focus and attention, I teach this in the course too, actually select a new pathway. You can project a brand new pathway into your future probability distribution field that didn't even exist before. You can create a brand new timeline and you put it on your timeline and then you engineer the probability of that. So you can actually create a whole new pathway that wouldn't have existed holistically. It's not based on your past. It's something that you created. And you can plop it in there, and then you can engineer that to become your outcome. So it's just a kind of a new way of looking at manifestation.
I love that. I love that. And it's funny, 2 thoughts right off the bat. One is you say you don't like the word manifestation because it's so loaded, and I want to say try being Christian. Anyway, and then and then the other thing is just that like basically what you're describing is it sounds like a program to just radically increase agency in a really mindful way. Because I mean that's what agency essentially is it's the power to collapse wave functions. It's the power to collapse probabilistic outcomes into one thing. And one thing that really sticks out to me is that if you did sort of plug in an outcome that you wanted, like let's say you're poor and you want $1 million. Okay, great. Like I want $1 million in a year. All right, you can probably get there, but there's a question of all the different things that have to happen that have never happened before in your life to get you there. And all the things that need to now not happen, like all the things you have to stop doing, all the things you need to start doing and stop doing in order to take this radically new path to get you to the, I'm going to manifest $1 million in a year. Like you probably could do that. Like, I mean, I should say literally the probability is there that you could do that. It's just a question of like all the things that you're saying no to, basically, all of the paths that you're not taking. And and it's very significant. And people, generally speaking, don't like to change. And so I would be very curious to see how your course handles the on the ground practicality of like reorienting someone toward a destination that they think that they want to go to, when it will require pretty radical personal change, because that's just how life works. You can't go to a new place that you've never been before by being the same person you've always been. Yep. That's just not how it works. So I address
really all those specifically because it's less of a manifestation course and more of a personal development course.
Sure.
It's based around the idea that your thoughts create your reality. So your thoughts have to be completely pure and intentional. And change is a very important part of it. And the universe, it's not just people don't want change. The universe doesn't want change because change requires more energy and there's more of a restructuring or reshuffling of things. So we create something called an MVM, which stands for a minimally viable manifestation. And the point of a minimally viable manifestation, it's an old marketing term that Eric Ries came up with a long time ago. It was called MVP. It was a minimally viable product. And it radically changed how Silicon Valley operated because they stopped trying to create the biggest, most perfect thing in the world, because perfection is the enemy of progress. And you started creating MVPs, which is the minimally viable. It means let's just get it workable and release it, and then we can tweak it and iterate it as we go.
Sure.
So what we do is a minimally viable manifestation, which means we're not trying to manifest $1 billion, right? Like, you don't want to shock the system. You don't want to radically change your life. You want to incrementally change your life in measured, manageable, verifiable ways. And then you can expand upon that once you get some momentum and you know what you're doing. It's very ill-advised to ever try to just manifest something ridiculous. Like they call it the curse of the lottery. They're like, oh, all these people win the lottery and terrible things happen. It's like, yeah, you just took a regular ass person and dumped $1 million on their head.
Yeah.
Bad things are going to happen. That's not good. You have to be emotionally, consciously, spiritually ready for that. So yeah, that's all stuff that I very delicately address in this. This is not a get rich quick thing. This is at a more of a personal spiritual level of just realizing that you have agency, like you said, and that life doesn't just happen to you. Like, it doesn't mean you can do anything, that everything's possible. Everything's possible within certain rule sets and restraints, but that you can adjust and expand those rule sets and those restraints, and you have a lot more agency than people think.
Yeah, if you want it.
Yeah. I mean,
and a lot of people don't.
It takes work. It's effort.
It's nice to be asleep sometimes, but I think once you start realizing how much control you have over your life, like the way that I heard Ellen Langer put it recently, she's one of my favorite mindfulness experts. She talked about how there is zero problem with procrastination. Like, actually is no issue with it at all. What is a problem is,
thank God,
if you aren't if you're doing it mindlessly. That's the only problem. She's like, there's no issue with the fact that you haven't written your novel because you were hanging out with your family. Like, it's if you were like running from the thing that you want mindlessly towards something that was less important to you, or you weren't awake for it, is basically what she's saying. And that's what it sounds like you're talking about, is just increasing people's awareness and awakeness to their decisions, their choices in their lives, which sounds incredible, and I'm going to look into it because it sounds awesome.
I've been planning on doing this thing, Jordan, that you're offering, and so you've locked me. I'm going to do it.
We're actually starting a cohort on January 1st. It's a 21-day challenge, for lack of better words. Anyways, there's a whole community built around it, and it's a whole lot of fun. So it's going to be really, really cool. You don't have to join that, but it's totally free. And I'll send you access to the course so y'all can, on me, so that y'all can play along. And it's a do it at your own pace course thing, but I'm also doing a group thing, just so that.
I mean, knowing myself and my past probabilities, I'd probably need to join the cohort.
Some people say that, and other people are like, nope, I got it. So I just kind of created both systems. But yeah, no, it'd be my pleasure to offer it to y'all. So just to at least get your feedback on it.
We will absolutely be back to talk about it. I mean, with or without you, we'll talk about how it goes, because I've been wanting to try to put into practice some of the things we talk about all the time on the show. And so it seems like a pretty cool thing to try out and let people know if it works. Or we'll just say, Jordan Crowder's a hack. Don't listen to him. Don't follow the show. We regret every moment we spent with him on.
Great guy, though.
Those are all possibilities, but I'm going to engineer the probability of the first one.
I believe it.
No, I'm very public and transparent, man. I appreciate all advice and input, and
awesome. We'll look forward to it, and we'll definitely follow up. Thanks so much. If you want to stick around for just a few minutes, we'd love to ask you questions that would make you uncomfortable to answer in public.
Sounds like my kind of show.
In today's epilogue, Jordan Crowder stuck around to talk about my own wrestle with the idea of reincarnation, how most of the world has always believed in it, and it's actually modern materialism that is the weird new thing. If you want to hear it, go to godsghostsufos.com or find the link in the description. See you next week, friends.